This video is supported by the Great Courses Plus. If you're a fan of this channel and the kind of stuff I talk about here, chances are you're also a fan of science fiction and stories set in the future. And in these imagined futures, there's a couple of different tropes that you see over and over again. One is the utopian Star Trek future, where we've moved past money and greed isn't a thing anymore. And then there's the dystopian futures, where we're all basically slaves to corporations that run the world. And obviously, the first one is the one that we all prefer and the one that we all want to go to sometime in the future. But when you start talking about getting rid of money, you get a lot of blank stares. I mean, that's just sci-fi nonsense. We can't actually do that, can we? I mean, can we? Mervyn Martinez, DW, Johan Aramark, Matthias Hubel, 75, Viking 75, James Hurt, Mark Gleason, and Shall I Continue asked, can you do a video on the Venus Project? In a video I put out earlier this year that I called The Dark Side of the Singularity, I talked about the economic near-term challenges that we're going to face as a society in the face of automation and technology. It became a really popular video, and a whole bunch of people in response to that told me that I should look into the Venus Project. And because I do everything I'm told, I did. So the Venus Project is a movement that was created to promote the idea of a resource-based economy, which was developed by a futurist and designer named Jacque Fresco, whose name sounds like something you'd order from a French restaurant. Yes, I would like the Jacque Fresco, please, and a Hot Pocket. Jacque Fresco was born in 1916 and spent his young adult life struggling through the Depression, which informed his ideas about the economy and society as he grew older. He was a self-taught designer and architect who championed prefabricated homes in the 50s and 60s, but his real passion was the future. In 1969, he published a book called Looking Forward, where he promoted this idea of living in a society where all the basic needs of everybody was met by automation and computers. He continued on this line of thinking for the rest of his life, eventually forming the Venus Project with Roxanne Meadows, advocating for a resource-based economy. They built a research center near Venus, Florida, based on his design principles, and used that as a home base to give presentations, tours, and make videos promoting their new social model. And that social model is an entirely new economy that's not based on money, where computers and technology and automation provide for all of our basic needs. Nobody has to work to get by. There's no poverty, no crime, and everything's totally sustainable. Zero waste whatsoever.
And it represents the application of the most sophisticated forms of science and technology toward problem solving so that we can reclaim the environment which we loused up over the years and to build a way of life worthy of man.
They imagine a world where societal decisions are not based on money, there's no human bias whatsoever, all the decisions are based totally on science, to the point that an artificial intelligence could even handle all the day-to-day operations of the community. If an idea works, you keep it. If it doesn't, you throw it away. They make the point that nobody's homeless because there aren't any homes, and nobody's hungry because there's not enough food. These are artificial scarcities that are created and built into our monetary system that we've created.
With the elimination of scarcity, the essential incentives change toward problem solving in general. When nations or groups of people do not have access to resources, their behavior is difficult to manage. It becomes aberrant, they lose their mental equilibrium.
The assumption is that our current system is wasteful and corrupt, and it puts all the power in the hands of a small number of people. And right now, we actually do live in a time, for the first time in human history, where technology has made abundance available. We can have everything we need, but the system that we live in creates artificial scarcity that shouldn't be there. And it's hard to argue with some of these points. Right now, today in the United States, 40% of our food gets thrown away. It's incredibly wasteful. We have giant garbage patches in the middle of the ocean the size of whole countries, and at our current rate of resource depletion, we're gonna need 2.5 Earths to keep up. And income inequality is rising every year, putting more and more of the resources in the hands of fewer and fewer people. In this age of information and supercomputers, how is that still a thing? Surely there's a more intelligent way to manage our resources and distribute them so that everybody gets a piece. This is what the resource-based economy aims to do. One of the main tenets of the resource-based economy is that all natural resources are the common heritage of the people, so that no one person or corporation could profit off of them. Which nobody would want to do anyway, because there's no such thing as profit when there's no money. This can be a difficult thing to wrap your head around, because as long as there have been civilizations, there's been a monetary system in place to guide the growth of those civilizations. You know, cash rules everything around me. Cream get the money, dollar dollar bill y'all. But with intelligent resource management, automation, and a whole systems approach to cities, people can have all their needs met, giving them time to pursue creative interests and spend their days learning and working to solve technical and societal problems. So the argument that many people are going to make that having all your needs met would cause people to just be louses and sit around and play video games and not contribute in any way, yeah, there are going to be some people that are going to do that, but it's also going to free up some people who don't have the ability to do that now to contribute to society in a way that they haven't ever been able to before. So it goes both ways. So how are they going to make this kind of economy possible? Through smart cities. The Venus Project's plan for smart cities is to incorporate a circular design, with the central hub housing the core of the cybernated system that controls resource management, educational and healthcare facilities, and communications networks. Radiating out from there in all directions are concentric rings of buildings housing office space, institutions, and research laboratories. Surrounding that is a green belt providing recreation and parks, then a residential belt with prefabricated homes that are nestled amongst ponds and lush gardens, designed so that no building would be visible to any other building, giving you the feeling of living in the middle of nature. From there we find a band of apartment buildings and high-rises, again made from pre-formulated modular pieces that also contain entertainment venues, theaters, and restaurants. Then an agricultural belt that grows all the food for the city, along with hydroponic, aquaponic, and aeroponic facilities. A circular waterway surrounds the agricultural belt for irrigation, and last but not least, a second recreation belt with paths for walking and biking, golf courses, and outdoor activities. Transportation is handled by a fleet of autonomous vehicles that everybody shares, so car ownership isn't a thing. All personal needs are provided, so shopping isn't a thing. And all utilities are monitored and controlled by a supercomputer, so utility bills aren't a thing. By constructing modular buildings in a radial pattern, you systemize construction so that it uses as few resources as possible. And by planning a city in a radial pattern, all you have to do is perfect the building of one section of that city and then just repeat that 7 times. Because all the streets are circular, it's impossible to get lost because you'll always wind up where you started. All the resources that don't get used are recycled and turned into other things. All buildings have solar collectors on them that store energy and battery-powered solutions as well. And the cities would be capped at a certain number of residents to avoid resource depletion, and if more people wanted to move there, they would just create a second city and go radially out from there. The purpose of the first circular cities would be to test, refine, and perfect the resource-based economy, but eventually the idea is to spread this throughout the entire world. A global system that ensures that everybody has all the resources they need, which means an end to war, an end to poverty, an end to exploitative business practices, just the entire human population focused singularly on its advancement as a species. Okay, so some of you are probably touching yourselves in the dirty place right now just hearing some of these ideas, and some of you are angrily banging out comments in all caps calling me a communist for acknowledging its existence. Well, I think you're both about to be shocked to hear me say that I think the Venus Project is an idea whose time will never come. Because while there are a lot of really great ideas around the Venus Project, I think it's built around a set of assumptions that I'm not 100% sure are true. The first assumption is that capitalism is fundamentally bad, it's corrupt, and has put too much power in the hands of too few people. And this is true, but maybe, and just go with me here, but maybe despite all of its flaws, when you look at the big picture, capitalism's kind of working. World poverty rates have gone down, the number of war deaths has gone down, infant mortality rates have gone down, global life expectancy is rising, and the world literacy rate is steadily increasing. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into those statistics, and you can't put all the credit on the shoulders of capitalism, but it is the predominant economic model in the world right now. Now, this doesn't mean that the negatives don't exist. They very much do. We are way too wasteful, we are too much in debt, and we make decisions based on a profit motive instead of what's good for people or what advances society forward. And we do still have the problem that I talked about in my previous video, the problem of what do we do when automation and technology gets rid of 30% of jobs out there, when 30% of our workforce can't get a job due to no fault of their own. That's still a problem we're going to have to contend with. Over the next several decades, capitalism is going to have to adjust to survive. In the stock market, when a stock gets too high and then comes back down, they call that a correction. I see a great correction coming for capitalism. I think capitalism 100 years from now is not going to look anything like capitalism today. So it may be that capitalism, if left to its own devices, will kind of become something like a resource-based economy, or at least take in some of the ideas from that. And by the way, it's not even about capitalism that much. Keep in mind, the Venus Project wants to get rid of monetary systems altogether, so capitalism, socialism, communism, and any other ism out there would go away under the Venus Project. And given the positive trajectories the world is going in right now, I'm not convinced that's the right idea. And the last thing that makes me a little bit cynical about this is that the whole circular city idea is something that's actually been around for a really long time. And it's never worked. Actually, fun fact, a very similar idea was put out there in the 1960s by Walt Disney in his original concept for Epcot. Now, anybody that's been to Disney World or just grew up watching a lot of Disney Channel knows all about Epcot Center, but what most people don't know is that the original concept for Epcot was something much, much more ambitious. Epcot stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. According to Disney's vision, it would be an ever-evolving city designed to test the newest and greatest ideas in housing and urban planning. It would be connected by monorail to the theme park and would house the employees of the park. In the other direction, it would connect to an office complex and eventually an airport by monorail, creating an entire connected system to serve not just the theme park, but the corporate headquarters of companies that would invest in the project. Epcot would feature a city center highlighted by a 30-story convention center and hotel. All downtown nightlife and recreation would be located in the city center, which would be enclosed from the weather and temperature controlled. All automobile traffic was diverted underground, so the whole area was pedestrian friendly, and residents would be moved around the city via automated transport that they called Wegway. Just outside the city center were high-density apartment buildings, and radiating out from there were homes spread out amongst parks and trails. This was Walt Disney's biggest dream in his later years, was to transform the way we live by creating an experimental concept city that could test out ideas that could be implemented in other cities around the world.
I believe we can build a community that more people will talk about and come to look at than any other area in the world. And with your cooperation, I'm sure this experimental prototype community of tomorrow can influence the future of city living for generations to come.
This film that was made to pitch the idea to investors is all that's left of the Epcot idea. Sadly, Walt passed away 2 months after shooting this, and the dream of Epcot died with him. But Epcot is not alone. From Octagon City in 1850s Kansas to England's Ebenezer Howard and his radial Garden City at the turn of the century, to Broadacre City, planned by none other than Frank Lloyd Wright, the circular modular city of the future is something that always seems to be planned, but never executed. There's a school of thought that a city is an evolving, living thing that springs forth from a place and from a history. And the reason these hyper-planned communities don't exactly work out is because they don't feel like a city. They feel engineered, manufactured, even authoritarian. Ironically, when you look at concept art about future civilizations, you see that radial circular city over and over and over again. It's almost a paradox. We seem to think that it's just an inevitable thing that we'll do in the future, but we never seem to really embrace it in the present. Now, this might be a good time for me to step back and say, for the record, I, for one, would love to see the Venus Project come to life. I know I'm doing a lot of naysaying here, but I think everything should be at least tried, and I think there's a lot of really good ideas that could be implemented there. I think we have entered this era of abundance where we have the technology to make these things possible. Intelligent resource management, automation of utilities that can provide for our basic needs with less waste. We just need our mindsets to catch up with the technology. And we may be getting there. There are a handful of smart city projects going on right now that may be implementing some of these ideas for the future. Earlier this year, a company called Sidewalk Labs, which is a subsidiary of the Alphabet umbrella that Google is also under, bought 12 acres of waterfront property in Toronto. Their goal is to test out smart city technology and designs. They'll have sensors all over the place, monitoring air quality, traffic noise, the usage of public spaces. It's the Internet of Things on a grand scale. All services and buildings will be accessed through one account, which obviously brings up some privacy issues, but this mountain of data they're collecting is something that could be used to improve cities all around the world. Just last week, Bill Gates purchased some land outside of Phoenix, Arizona with the idea to build a smart city of some kind. We don't know what the design ideas are for that just yet, though. And in South Korea, a major smart city project called Songdo has been in the works for a few years now. They are running into some budgetary issues and they're having trouble meeting their goals, but it's planned to be done by 2020. So again, maybe some of these capitalist ventures will reach the same place as the Venus Project. I guess we'll see. But I want to wrap this up by going back to Jacque Fresco. This is a guy who spent 70 years promoting a single idea. One that most people thought was crazy, one that he knew was impossible to achieve, but one that he truly believed would make the world a better place. He was a talented guy. Designer, architect, inventor, he could have done a lot of things to enrich himself throughout his life, but he made the resource-based economy his life's work. Whether you agree with it, whether you think it would work or not, you have to give the guy credit for the determination that he showed in trying to improve the world. Jacque Fresco died in May of this year at 101 years old. And though he never got to see his dream come true, he did get recognized in 2016 by the Novus Summit at the UN in acknowledgement of his efforts to eliminate poverty and promote sustainability. So Jacques, Good show, old chap. If you want to learn more about Jacques and the Venus Project and the resource-based economy, I'll put lots of links down in the description below. But if you want to learn about our current economic systems and how we got here, and many more things, you can go to thegreatcoursesplus.com. There's an entire section of the Great Courses Plus dedicated to the economy, from the history of the economy showing how our monetary systems developed over the years to where it is right now, to behavioral economics, which describes how our psychological biases affect our buying decisions, which affects the global economy as a whole. It's fascinating stuff. Or if the city planning thing was more interesting to you, there are courses that talk about how the Greeks and Romans designed their cities way back in the day, and the way urban planners in the early 20th centuries created social reform to refine the way we live in cities. Interested in modular architecture? It's there. If you're interested in the rise of autonomous machines, it's there. Pretty much anything that I talked about in this video that you find interesting, there's an entire course about it in the Great Courses Plus. Because you guys are awesome, the Great Courses Plus is offering a free 1-month trial to Answers with Joe viewers. Just go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/answerswithjoe to sign up. Link in the description. A big thanks to the Great Courses Plus for sponsoring this video, and of course a big thanks to the Answer Files on Patreon for doing the same. There's a lot of new people I gotta give a quick shout out to. I'm gonna breeze right through this. I'm gonna murder some names and I apologize, but there's a lot of people here. I wanna call them out. There's Ali Kirsney, Paul Balchin, Tobias Gebauer, George Fairweather, Lynn Chen, Matthias Hiefendelfer, Jamie Martin, Martin Dufresne, Jel Terpestra, Ronnie, Tyler Bastacion, I can't even hardly see this, John Boyle, Aristides Kalopoulos, Jordan Wright, Peter Austin, Paolo Grobelniak, Locker, George Gagne, Jao Lucas Hilgert, and Kurt Hammerich. Oh my God. Thank you guys so much. That is so many people. If you would like to join them and would like to get access to secret perks like my secret vlog and all kinds of cool stuff, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe. Thank you guys for watching. The Venus Project is a very fascinating subject. There's a lot of stuff I didn't get to cover, and I'm sure there's a lot of opinions out there. I encourage you to share it down below. Be nice. And if this is your first time here, I encourage you to subscribe. Check out some of these other videos that should be appearing right about here, and see if it's something that you like. I do videos just like this every Monday. All right, thanks for watching. You guys go out, have an eye-opening week, and I will see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.